have to join you today what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, great American, whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree is a great beacon of light, of hope to millions of Negro slaves who have been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still badly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lies on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro still languishes in the corners of American society and finds himself in the exile in his own land. So we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. They were signing a promissory note to which our American has to file heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, will be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note as so far as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But refuse to believe that the bank of the injustice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give as us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We've also come to this hollow spot to remind America of this fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in a luxury of cooling off or to take this tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make the real promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise the real promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to a solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make a justice of real reality for all of God's children. It will be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that a Negro ended to blow off steam and will be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright days of justice emerge. And that is something that I must say to my people who stand on the worn threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hate. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. And again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancies which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to distrust all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by the presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is intricately bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. As we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking that the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as a Negro is the victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our body is heavy with fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels or the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro's basic mobility is from the smaller ghetto to the larger ones in cities. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their adulthood and robbed of their dignity by the signs of stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as Negroes in Mississippi cannot vote and the Negroes in New York City believe he has nothing to which to vote for. No, we're not satisfied. We'll not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I'm not mindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells. Some of you have come from the areas which your quest for freedom left you battered by the storms of persecution and stirred by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creativity of suffering. Continue to work with the faithful and earn suffering or redemptive. Go back to the Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of your northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, and even through my face, the difficulties of the day and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It's a dream deeply enrooted in Americans. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out a true meaning of this creed. We hold the truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at a table of brotherhood. Have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering at the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into the oasis of freedom and justice. Have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Have a dream that one day in Alabama, with his vicious racist, and with his governor having the lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, and one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and sisters and brothers. Have a dream today. Have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and every mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the south with the faith we will be able to hew out the mountains of despair and the stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling scores of our nation that is built simply of brotherhood. With the faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, strong together, go to jail together, stand up freedom together, knowing that we will be free today. This will be the day we, all God's children, be able to sing with the new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. Of thee I sing, land where my fathers died, land of pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prestigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightened of Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvy slopes of California. Not only that, let freedom ring from the stone mountains of Georgia. Let freedom ring from the long-top mountains of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. When we all when we all freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every city and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we'll be able to speed up that day when all God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing the words of that old Negro spiritual. Free at last, great God Almighty, we're free at last.